You just talked about putting pressure on himself. I don't think he puts pressure on himself. I just think he's focused, and he doesn't focus on what other people are saying. He's focused on getting better in his own mind and making sure that he improves as a quarterback and as a person, and that, as a young man, that's what he's been taught by Nick Saban, and he's been taught very, very well when it comes to that stuff.
Well, you're coming in. You don't have Devontae Smith. There's all the expectation of what A.J. Brown, in terms of being a playmaker, is going to mean, John, to this offense. And in what was arguably perfection from a QBR standpoint for Jalen, he didn't have either of his two number ones, but he moved the football, and he did it in a lot of different ways. Did you, when you look at the plays, did you like the way he conducted himself on that opening drive? Did you see anything that we didn't, that he may have done wrong out there during that, even though he was? Hard to say you did something wrong when you're 6 for 6.
Perfect passer rating. There were, he probably escaped the pocket a little bit too quickly than you would prefer. I'm sure the coaching staff will talk to him about that. But ultimately, when you have that number 158.3, you're not going to do much complaining. On the other hand, it's not something you should get used to. I mean, it's hard to do that. So there are going to be hiccups along the way. And that's why you look at things and say, you don't just erase it and say, okay, it's perfect from a passer rating standpoint. But you have those teachable moments and say, hey, you know what? Instead of flushing right, maybe you could climb the pocket. Maybe you can extend the play that way and still keep your eyes downfield. Just little things like that.
Post-game press conference from the podium with Jalen Hurts. The same Jalen Hurts that we've come to love in the post-game. Doesn't take debate, doesn't get emotional, answers the question, and moves on to the next question. Pretty much the same?
Always the same. Never changes. Flat line. He's not an EKG, man. He's straight across. There's not highs and lows. He got a lot of questions about the hit, for instance. And he's like, I'm fine. Nothing happened. You don't like it, but there was a flag. He popped right up. You move on to the next play, where everybody else is concerned about it. That's the strength of Jalen Hurts. He's very, very even-keeled. And you'll see that everybody's going to have ebbs and flows. Nobody's going 17-0. Nobody's perfect. And you're going to have ups and downs during the season. And it's nice to have a quarterback that deals with the ups the same way he deals with the downs. So he's not going to get too excited by 158.3 like a lot of people are. And when he has a bad day, he's not going to get too down on himself. And that's a very good trait to have as a quarterback in this league.
I do think there's a lot of pressure on Jalen. There's a lot of self-inflicted pressure. I think that or a standard that he holds himself to. And I think it's more magnified in the 2022 season for him. Did he comment about his game? Did he feel good about the series that he played in that opening drive? Did he talk about that at all?
Just in his typical way. It's about getting better. It's about, being better today than yesterday and being better tomorrow. He's very well schooled by Nick Saban. That's where he learned it. He's not going to deter from that. He's not going to take the rat poison. And I always say the rat poison that he describes can be both good and bad. In other words, people typically think of it as criticism. Well, he thinks of it as, if you're blowing smoke up as because of 158.3, he considers that rat poison.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you start patting yourself on the back, the next thing you're standing still instead of getting better. So he's very mature. He just turned 24. Incredibly mature for his age. You look at some of the other players on the team that have gotten involved with some social media nonsense. He doesn't pay attention to that. You just talked about putting pressure on himself. I don't think he puts pressure on himself. I just think he's focused, and he doesn't focus on what other people are saying. He's focused on getting better in his own mind and making sure that he improves as a quarterback and as a person, and that, as a young man. That's what he's been taught by Nick Saban, and he's been taught very, very well when it comes to that stuff.
Well, you've had the opportunity to watch every step on his progression line up to and including the game tonight. All of his practices so far coming into the 2022 season. You've been there for every one of them. So you've watched them. What do you see? Do you see Jalen better today than he was at the end of last season in your mind?
He hasn't been great in training camp. He hasn't been great in practice, but I say all the time, he's not a practice player. So many of the things he does well, and you saw today, extending plays, going outside, off-schedule offense. In practice, they blow the whistle, and they say, we got to protect the quarterback. We got to go to the next rep. And you don't know what's going to happen. In a live environment like today was, I think he's a better game day player than he is a practice player. So in practice, sometimes it doesn't look great, to be honest. The majority, we've seen 10 practices. I'd say he's had 2 really good practices out of 10. Now there's some nondescript practices. He's probably only had, I'm going off the top of my head, he's probably only had 2 or 3 bad practices, 2 good practices, and everything else is pretty much in between. So he's not a practice player, and I've said it since last year. And that's probably not going to change.
Football 24/7 with NFL insider John McMullen, who is down at Lincoln Financial Field, preseason week number 1 in the books. Johnny.